Hi folks, Erika here with PrepScholar GRE. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a second to make sure that all of our audio and video is working correctly, give folks a chance to join. So hold on just a couple of minutes and we'll get started. All right, so it seems like everything's working okay. So we have a chat live on the side of your screen or below your screen, depending on where you're watching this, and what size your screen is. If you'd like to ask questions, feel free to throw your questions into the chat, and I'm happy to answer those. So these questions can be general about the GRE, they can be specific about the GRE. So they can be questions about how to study, about test day, or about a specific question type, or a specific problem even that you've been working on over the past couple of days. Anyway, whatever your question is, feel free to ask it. If you have questions about PrepScholar GRE in general, also happy to answer those. Hello to everyone in the chat, Jersey Crow and Maple Leaf. Thanks for joining us. We'll go ahead and just hang out until folks throw some questions in the chat, but don't be shy because there are not many so far. All right, so starting to get some questions. All right, have a question. I have 1 month left until my exam date. How do I prepare for quant in 1 month? So great question. It kind of depends on your situation. So it depends on where you're starting, mainly. So if you're starting with a relatively strong score and you only need to improve by a few points, what you're going to do is going to be slightly different than what someone's going to do who has very little quant background. So first things first is I would determine where you're starting, and then go from there. Other things that I would do to prepare for quant in 1 month. You're going to have to be really diligent about seeking out your own mistakes and then trying to fix those. So the first thing that I would do is create an error log for your mistakes. And as you practice, make sure that for every problem you're missing, go in and try to determine, okay, well, what did I get wrong? What happened here? What mistake did I make? Okay, why did that mistake happen? And make that very personal. So maybe I didn't know a formula, but also maybe I did sloppy scratch paperwork. Maybe I misread the question. Maybe I just missed a word. Maybe I stopped too early and thought I had the answer when really there was one more step. And then go, okay, well, how do I fix that? And then be really sure that you get that answer. So if you are making mistakes, but you're not determining how to do anything with them, the practice is totally pointless. So that would be my main thing, is try to target your own mistakes. If you're finding that that's difficult, then a program like PrepScholar GRE, which helps you determine where your mistakes are, where your weaknesses are, and then specifically gives you a study schedule to hit those things, would be really useful for you. So yes, it's going to be very personal, going to depend on you. If you want additional help with that sort of process, something like PrepScholar GRE would help. Also, personal tutoring is a great way to make sure you're doing things effectively. Awesome. Okay. Got a question. Has the GRE gotten difficult? I took it 2 weeks ago, found it to be difficult. I mean, the test does kind of change over the years. I don't know that there have been any major changes recently, if you're comparing it to a previous test date that you have taken the test on. It is a challenging exam, so if you found the test difficult, that's okay. That's kind of the point of the test, is for it to be difficult. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's been any major changes in the last year or so that I can think of off the top of my head. Ba, 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 ba. Are there any mock examinations online? Yes. So the ones that you definitely want to take, if you go to the ETS website and log into your account, there are going to be 2 free exams with a program called PowerPrep. If you haven't already taken those are wonderful because those are from the makers of the test. They are also using the exact same setup that you will see on test day, so it'll help you get used to the whole scenario. So the difficulty is accurate, the algorithm's accurate, the question topics themselves are accurate, the experience is accurate, but there's only 2 of them that are free. There are more that you can pay money for, but it is kind of a limited number of real exams available. In terms of other options, there may be some that are available from other test prep companies. PrepScholar does not offer any not real exams at this point. We think that using real exams from the makers of the test is the best way for you to succeed. So what that means is pace yourself with exams. First, because there aren't that many to go around. And secondly, because if you're taking too many tests and not giving yourself time to learn from them and to study what you find based on those tests, then you're not really getting a ton of benefit out of them. So typically I recommend probably taking one every 2 to 3 weeks. Depending on when your test day is, but I would not take it any more frequently than every other week. Okay, wow. So we've got some really off-topic comments. If you are sending off-topic comments, please don't. We're trying to learn about the GRE here. All right. Okay, what else have we got? Okay, first question. Are 300 vocabulary lists for 20 days sufficient? Let's see. Can you get that done in 20 days? Might be a little bit difficult, but you can absolutely try. What I would probably recommend is, rather than trying to get through all 300, is take it piece by piece. Specifically, if you're talking about the PrepScholar vocab program, which is 300 words and is free on our blog for anyone who's interested. It's really good. We handpicked those words based on real GRE materials, based on which ones show up more frequently. I played a large part in making that. It's really good. And it allows you to use those words in the context of GRE style problems, allows you to quiz yourself using flashcards. It's awesome. What I would recommend is I would prioritize the words that will appear most frequently. So with the PrepScholar course, we have the will appear, likely to appear, may appear. I would prioritize learning those will appears. Once you have all of those down, then see if you can make it through the likely to appears. Then if you can get all of those down, move on to the may appears. It's better to really get those words that are most likely to occur than to just try to do a bunch and not really memorize any of them. So that would be my recommendation. Is 300 words enough for test day? I mean, you're gonna see words you don't know on test day. That's just the nature of vocab. There's no way to be sure you know every word that will appear on the test. I go into GRE exams and see some words that I'm like, I've got like a pretty good guess, but I'm not entirely sure. I've never used it in my lifetime. Probably seen it like twice. That's the point. So no, you're not necessarily going to know everything with 300 words, but going anywhere beyond 300 words is just a waste of time. You're not going to be able to memorize much more than that, and you're getting into the territory where a bunch of the words there are just filler words that are really unlikely to appear on any test. So can you do it in 20 days? I don't know. I would say prioritize the ones that are most important. Is 300 words sufficient for the test? I would say it's your best bet if you're going to study vocab, is to go with 300 words and then prioritize within that group. Beyond that, that is probably not a great list. Okay. Cool. Okay, I have my GRE in 8 days. Any last minute tips? So at this point, you're not going to learn anything. So just being totally honest, I'm not going to learn anything here, which is fine. What you can do is solidify your strategy. So what would be useful is if you've been keeping an error log, to start reviewing that. If you haven't been keeping an error log, get a piece of paper and write down what are the biggest strategies that you think will be useful for you going into test day. And add to that over the next few days and just review that. What are the things you want to remember when you come to problems? What are the things that you've been forgetting? What are the things that you've been messing up on? Write yourself strategies that you can take to test day so that they're fresh in your mind when you start. That's really useful. About a week before your test day, it's a good idea to take a final practice test, if you still have one, to kind of get a baseline for what your test day is probably going to look like, and then use that to maybe brush up on a couple of things last minute, maybe add to that list of strategies. Other things are mostly just emotional preparation. One thing that I find really helpful is to kind of visualize test day, kind of visualize the scenario and visualize being successful. So what that means is not visualizing getting your perfect score and visualizing getting into your dream school, but visualizing succeeding on questions and succeeding on hard questions, right? Getting a hard question that you don't necessarily know and then moving on and then coming back to it, or doing process of elimination, or using good guessing strategies, or switching to estimation, or using other strategies like plugging in answer choices. Using good strategy to overcome difficult situations is a really good thing to prepare yourself for, so that on test day, when you run into those difficult situations, which you will, you're prepared for them and you know how to succeed given them. So that's a really useful thing, is just trying to emotionally prepare yourself. Other than that, other things I would recommend would be day before your test day, make sure everything's prepped so you don't have to think in the morning. Make sure that you are awake enough when you reach your testing location. Have like a normal breakfast. Don't eat too much or you might get sick, but don't not eat. And then make sure that you're breathing. Pretty important. And the other thing that I would recommend morning of the test is to read something somewhat academic to make sure your brain is awake. So we want our bodies to be awake, but we also want our brains to be awake. So we don't want to do any last minute cramming in the morning, but what we might want to do is read like an article in The Economist, or in like the New York Times, or in Scientific American, something that just gets our brain going, yes, I do know how to read, and I can do that this morning. One of the things I find that can be really unfortunate for students is that they get into the test and over their first few problems their brains are still booting up. We don't want that, because it can really throw off your timing. It can cause you to miss a couple of questions. So morning of the test, make sure your brain is alive and working. But good luck on your test. Hopefully you've been prepping. All right, what else have we got? Okay. Okay, so this is from the previous question. I'm rooting for a score above 325. Awesome. I'm an engineer, so probably with a decent quant background, but I'm having difficulty in getting the answers correct easily. I mean, I take time in solving. So what I would say is, it sounds like you're struggling mostly with time management. What I would say is be prepared to move on if something isn't clicking with you. So if the strategy you're going at isn't happening, move to a new strategy or move to a new question. The worst thing you can do is spin your wheels, beat your head against the desk if something's not happening. So be prepared to move on. Likely when you come back later, you'll have a better strategy, or when you try a different tack, it'll work better. The other thing that I would recommend is spend time to save time, which basically means spend more time reading the question. Spend more time setting up your work. Spend more time interpreting words into math. It sounds like it would take you more time, but actually no. What I find a lot of students do is they jump too quickly into solving without spending enough time just getting comfortable with the scenario, getting comfortable with the problem, really figuring out, what is this asking? What is this telling me? Can I make this simpler, right? If you spend more time taking the information you have and making it usable, making it something you can work with, then you're more likely to have success there. So invest more time early on. If you spend like 30 seconds trying to interpret a problem and you're going, I have no idea where to go, then probably move on to a new question. But typically, if you invest that time, the problem comes much more naturally. Okay. I have less than 10 days. Only focusing on PrepScholar's 300 words is okay. If you are just trying to study vocab, yes. But I would say if you only have 10 days left, vocab is not the thing you should be studying. You should be studying strategy. You should be preparing yourself to hit your mistakes. So vocab is probably not going to happen very effectively in 10 days. Sorry to break it to you. And also vocab is not the most effective thing to study. I recommend watching our vocab video. What you're better off doing is focusing more time on breaking down sentences, on interpreting relationships between blanks, getting really comfortable with that strategy, and then trying to guess on those vocabulary words on test day. Okay. GRE-centric colleges. I don't really know what that question is asking. My guess is that it's about what schools are more focused on the GRE versus other elements of your application. I'm not entirely sure what that question's asking, so if you have more details on that, feel free to re-ask the question. But this is also mostly focused on the GRE itself and how to succeed there, not necessarily on schools. That's not really my area of expertise. If you want to go to the PrepScholar GRE blog, we have a lot more information about admissions and that sort of thing there. Okay. Question: can you predict my score at a final GRE exam if I've scored 300 in a mock on Manhattan Prep Online? So, if that test is accurate, you can probably expect to be somewhere in the range of 300. Now, there's a fairly significant margin of error, more or less, depending on the student. Similarly, Manhattan tests are not necessarily 100% accurate. Nothing except the real deal is going to be a great, perfect predictor of your score. So I would say that's probably a pretty good estimate, but I would recommend taking one of those power prep exams to get a better estimate of your score. It'll probably just make you feel more comfortable to have that under your belt. But typically in my experience, Manhattan tests end up being harder than the real thing. So you're probably in pretty good shape there. Just make sure that you're taking it under accurate conditions, timed, that you have the same level of stress. If you're, taking it in your apartment, you're probably not going to be as stressed as you might be in a testing center. So try to take that test as accurately as possible, and you'll likely have a better prediction of your score. Similarly, having multiple test scores can help you see if you're scoring consistently. Some folks I see are not using a ton of strategy and are kind of reinventing the wheel for every question. So that means on some tests they do really well, and on some tests they really don't, and there's more variation. So a second test, specifically one from ETS, would be really useful for you in judging that. Okay. Guide the way to study the verbal section. What techniques do you recommend for the vocabulary learning part and essay writing? Okay, so that's a very broad question. You're going to study pretty differently for each type of the verbal section. So kind of text completion and sentence equivalence kind of go under an umbrella, and that umbrella is interpreting relationships in sentences, and then in vocabulary study. Reading comprehension is its own umbrella, which is learning how to properly interpret passages, learning how to predict answers, learning how to determine question types. And then the essay is its own thing. So really quickly to address the essay is not tremendously important. We got a lot of comments on one of the videos we came out with where basically I was going, I pretty much ignored the essay. I ignored the essay personally because I don't really teach the essay and because I'm not going to grad school. So that was my experience. But the other part is that grad schools don't really care about the essay. They want you to pass the essay. They don't need you to do an incredible score. So the essay is to determine, can you communicate effectively in writing, and did you write your application essays? They're looking for plagiarism here. So if your essay that you've written for the GRE is very, very dramatically different from your application essays, then they're going to start going, this may not be the most academically honest person. That's it. So if you're getting like a 4, if you're bringing in an average score, that's fine. So for me, that was not a struggle. For some folks, what you're probably going to want to do is maybe do some research on what the essay means. If you have had success on previous standardized test essays, you'll probably be successful here. It's very formulaic. If you follow a pretty basic like essay structure, make sure you're using good transitions, make sure you're linking your sentences together, you're probably going to be fine. So what I would recommend is checking out our blog. We have a lot of good articles there about the essay. Just Google around, try 1 or 2 on your own, but investing more time in that is probably not a good idea. What I recommend is coming up with a pretty good template for what you want your essay to look like, and then try it a couple times and you'll be fine. That's it. In terms of vocabulary study, check out our vocab video, would be my big recommendation. It explains the best way to handle those questions. The first thing is vocab is not the most important thing. We'll explain what that most important thing is. It's relationships. And then we'll talk about how to effectively study vocab. So check out that video. It'll really help you. All right. Does the analytical writing section count toward the end score? If it doesn't, should I not prepare for it? So kind of just answered that there. It is not part of your overall score. It is a separate score. So should you prepare for it? Kind of. We don't want to scare any schools. It's basically, we can kind of think of it as pass-fail. If we get like a 4 or above, we passed, we did it, right? No one's going to be afraid of that score. That's not going to concern anyone. If you personally did not write your application essays, you should be concerned no matter what, because plagiarism is bad, and they'll likely be able to tell. If you scored below that score, if you're kind of in that below average territory, that's probably not going to get your application thrown in the trash, but it is likely to put a red flag on your application, and in combination with other things might be concerning to an admissions committee. So should you study for it? A little. You should find out what the essay is about, what are the general standards for the essay, how is it graded, what's the structure, maybe do some reading on what do some good essays look like, what is a good template to follow, get some advice there. Again, our blog is awesome, but really I don't recommend spending more than like a couple hours in total on this. What is a sufficient AWA in your opinion? 4. And you can also do research on your particular schools to see if they have any specific requirements. But yes, you can also check out our blog for more. All right. How many hours should be dedicated for GRE prep on a daily basis? Depends. Depends on what you're trying to do. So if your goal is to improve a lot, probably more hours. If your goal is to not improve a lot, then less hours. It also depends on your timeline. If your goal is to improve a lot, but you have a lot of time, you can be a little bit less aggressive. If you have a lot to improve and a little time, first maybe adjust your goals, but you'll probably need to spend more time per day. General guidelines, studying for less than like a half hour is probably not going to be effective. You're probably not going to get much done. You're probably not going to follow through enough on anything that you actually do to be successful, because we want to do the problems and then we want to analyze the problems to see what sorts of mistakes were made, why did they happen, blah, blah, blah. How can we fix them? How can we address them next time? So I recommend probably like minimum an hour if you're going to study. Maximum, I would say your longest study day should be a day in which you take a test. You should take a test. You should commit about an hour that day for some kind of high-level review of that test. and then that's it. Come back to it another day and spend maybe a couple of hours on that. If you're spending like 4+ hours studying in a day, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be good study. It's just not. So those are kind of my recommendations there. My other thing is don't study every day. Give yourself a day off at least, maybe a couple days off. Burnout is real. If you are not in a good place to take the test on test day, it doesn't matter how much you studied. So know yourself, watch how you're doing, and judge accordingly. Okay. I usually get 1 out of 2 right in 2 blank, 1 out of 2 answer choices right in 2 blank text completions. How can I remedy this? My recommendation, if you're not predicting an answer before you're looking at the answer choices, predict an answer. And predict using the relationship between the 2 blanks. There are questions in 2 blank text completion questions where the blanks are not related to each other. But in most cases, they are. So if we're getting one of those blanks right, we should be able to use transition words, relationships in the sentence to determine what we want for our other blank. So ignore the answer choices. Come up with your own words or phrases to go in the blanks. They don't need to be perfect. If it's even just 1 is positive, 1 is negative, that's okay. You have a start there. Make a prediction and then go to your answer choices and determine accordingly. I really struggle with reading comprehension. I never get it done in time. Would you please help with reading comprehension, whether or not to take notes? So we have a really great video on this on our channel that I would recommend checking out that talks about general strategies. Probably going to go into more depth than I can here, so I'd really recommend watching that. Main thing, if you're really struggling with timing, is take some time. I mean, it depends on the type of question. I'm guessing that what you're referring to is those longer passages with multiple questions. In that case, what you want to do is skim the passage, get your big ideas. We talk more about this in this video. And take notes, but only take notes at the end of each paragraph. And you don't have to put them on your paper if you don't want to. You can take those notes in your head. But taking the time at the end of every paragraph to go, in like 5 words, what was the point of this paragraph, is a really useful step. Then for your questions, if you're spending a lot of time there, it probably means you're agonizing over the answer choices more than you should. So what you can do is read the question and then come up with your own answer in your own words. Once you have your answer, or maybe a couple of options for an answer, look at the answer choices and find one that matches yours and eliminate answers that don't match yours. That's going to help you get through those confusing answer choices much more quickly. For you, it'll be about efficiency in getting through that passage to start. And again, we're skimming this passage before we look at the questions, right? It ends up being more efficient because we get those bigger ideas first. We don't have to spend as much time rereading and rereading for each question. So passage rating strategies and then predicting an answer. If you're talking about those passages where there is one question for the passage strategy, there's a little bit different. In that case, you should probably read the question, read the passage to find the answer, predict that answer, then look at the answer choices. So strategy varies depending on what you're approaching there. How to improve AWA working by myself. I would recommend using resources on the internet to find a template and then follow that template. It's really not rocket science for these essays, and if you are trying to make it beautiful, don't. That's not the point. The point is to write an effective essay, and an effective essay can follow a pretty basic template. So I recommend heading to our blog, and there are other blogs out there by other great test prep companies, reading about the essay, reading advice for the essay, reading sample essays, and then trying to fit your own writing to that general template. Now, when I say template, I don't mean copy the exact words. Don't do that. That's plagiarism and also not great. But having an idea for, okay, my first paragraph does this, my second paragraph does this, third, fourth, and then this is my 5th paragraph, my conclusion. Within my body paragraphs, I want the first sentence to do this, I want the second sentence to do this, I want sentences 3 and 4 and maybe 5 to do this, and then my last sentence will do this other thing. That's a good template. And then finding where you want to have transition words. That's the sort of thing that you want to do. That's how I would recommend studying. But if you've already got a 4, don't study anymore for that section, unless that's the school that you're applying to has specific requirements for high AWA, which I've never seen. How many times did I take the GRE? Once. I've only done it once. So I have taken plenty of practice tests on my own time, but the actual experience of going to the testing center is kind of expensive. So I've only gone and done it one time myself in the real testing environment. But I did have some advantage in that I've spent years and years and years in test prep. Even before I moved to GRE, I was working with other standardized tests, and a lot of the stuff that you're doing to succeed on the GRE is what you're doing to succeed on these other tests. So content, mostly the same as a lot of other tests, but strategy in particular, pretty much the same as other tests. So, yes. All right. How many mock tests would be sufficient before the actual exam? You should take at least one. I'd say probably 2 or 3. But if you are 2 weeks from your test, only take 1. If you're 4 weeks from your test, you can probably fit 2. If you're 6 weeks from your test, you can probably fit 3. Now, if you're farther than that, then you might want to take more or spread those tests out further. Don't take tests more frequently than once every 2 weeks. The exception is that you can take a practice test a week before your actual exam. But don't cram your practice tests any closer than that, or you're not going to have enough time to learn between them, have enough time to apply what you found. So it's not so much a question of what's sufficient before your exam as what do you have time for, and what would make an effective scaffolding for the rest of your study. But yeah, I would recommend probably 2 to 3. If you don't have enough time for 2 to 3 practice tests before your test day, you aren't giving yourself a whole ton of time to prep. So hopefully it goes well. Hopefully you're just feeling really confident. Okay. How to crack reading comprehension. Kind of already answered that question. Definitely check out our video on reading comprehension for more. And is Barron's 333 words enough for vocabulary? Maybe. It's definitely enough words. I have looked at that list myself. And I think some of the words on there are great. I don't know that all of the words are awesome. You're going to have to determine for yourself if you trust that source to be good for vocabulary. I would recommend, if you are going to study 300 words, to use our PrepScholar vocab course. It's free. It's on our blog. It's behind a social gate, so you have to like it on Facebook or tweet about it to get to it. But it is totally free, and the words in there are guaranteed good words. They are words that we have gotten from real GRE sources, from real GRE practice materials, real GRE tests. So they are words that we have seen to be the most common, and it's also divided between will appear, likely to appear, and may appear, so you can prioritize which ones are most important. So if you are going to study 300 words, I would recommend doing our course, just because I know for a fact that it's good. But if you're going, is 300 words a good amount? Yes, it's a good amount. More than that is probably going to be, you're risking the quality of your list as well as the quality of your study. What are the topics of essays? That's something you can find out on the internet. Probably don't need me to tell you that. Google for it, and you can find information. We have a lot of information on our blog if you want to check that out. How to improve on text completion? Great question. So text completion and sentence equivalence are all about relationships. They are about how your blank relates to other things in the sentence. or in the other sentences. They are about how your blanks relate to each other. So the main thing that you can do is try to go, how does this blank relate to this blank? Are they similar? Are they opposites? Is there a cause and effect relationship here? Is there a contrast relationship, a contradiction relationship? What's going on? Is one a more extreme version than the other? Are they synonyms? Is one a verb that leads to a similar noun? Try to find your relationship there. Then try to predict it in your own words. If you're going to the answer choices, you are falling into traps, right? The answer choices on the verbal section are all traps. They are meant to hurt you. So come up with your own answer first. You're smarter than this test, right? So come up with your own answer. Trust your brain. Then use your answer to look at the answer choices. And it's okay if your answer isn't a word. If it's a phrase, that's okay. If it's an idea, that's okay. Go to the answer choices and then eliminate the ones that don't match. Pick the answer that does. If you're down to a couple, try plugging them into the sentence. Try plugging them in with the other words in the other blanks. Sometimes what you'll find is that all of the words work in one blank by itself, but when we plug in other words into the other blanks, it doesn't work. So think about them together. Think about the relationships between the words. Our video on vocab would probably be useful for you there because we talk a lot about this there. And we also have a video coming out soon about the different question types that would probably be useful for you. All right. Writing notes and reading comprehension consumes time. Are there other ideas? Well, okay, you don't have to write notes. But what you do have to do is you do have to interpret as you go. If you're just skimming and you're not interpreting, you're not going to get enough information and you will fail to answer these questions. Like, very bluntly, if you're not interpreting as you go, you will not succeed on this section. So you'll save time, but you will not get the questions right. You will take more time on the questions trying to get them right, and then you still won't get them right. So if you're refusing to interpret as you go, it's not going to succeed. So what you can do is skim, right? Only read the important sentences. Sentences that aren't important, don't read them. We talk about this in our reading comprehension video, but sentences that are important tend to be first sentences of a paragraph, last sentences of a paragraph, and sentences with transition words. Other sentences are probably not important. Don't read them. At the end of each paragraph, do stop, do interpret. If it takes time, that's okay, but it shouldn't take much more than 5 to 10 seconds. If it takes any longer than that, you didn't read very well, and you should probably work on that. Cool. And really, you're coming up with like a 5 to 10 word summary, so it's not very long, should not take very much time. All right. I am not able to complete 20 questions within 30 minutes. How can I manage it? You should work on your time management. Typically I find that if your time management is struggling, often it's reading comprehension that's throwing it. So watch our reading comprehension video for ways to more effectively manage your time. Other things that you can do is just accept that some problems are going to be too hard and you're going to have to guess. Move on. So if a question, you're spinning your wheels, you're just going, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. You're reading the answers over and over and over again. You're reading the sentence over and over and over again. It's not helping at that point. Move on. Go through the other questions that you are more likely to get right. And then in your last few seconds, guess on those problems. Or if you have more time, come back to it and see if you can get it right. But if a question is not happening, don't waste time on it. Use your time effectively. So accept that some questions you're probably going to miss them. Try to spend more time on the questions that you're more likely to get right, especially those questions that are right on the edge, where you're going, I can get this right, but it's likely to take a little more time. That's where to invest your time, and not on the questions where you're going, I really don't know. Okay, what else? Retaking the GRE to improve my quant score from 165 to ideally 168 plus. How to go about that fine-tuning. Error log for you. Absolutely. So it's not a huge jump in score. target the things that you're missing. So this can be content, so you might find that you're missing a specific type of question, and you can really target learning more about the question type, spending more time with it, spending more time interpreting it, blah, blah, blah. But it might be a certain strategy, right? You might be finding that you're making a lot of errors based on your scratch paper work. You might find that you're making a lot of computation errors. You might find that you're really frequently misinterpreting the question. Try to really hone in on what that mistake is. Doing that error log process will really help. We've talked a bit about an error log on this channel, but if you want more information on what an error log is, we've got a really good video on that on our GMAT channel. If you want to check that out, the same principles apply. But an error log would be the most useful thing for you. Try to target what your mistakes are and then try to address those. Come up with strategies that will help you fix your mistakes. Going through and doing a very general review is not going to be particularly helpful. Focus on the things that are helpful for you. If you're really struggling with that, I find that a personal tutor can be really good as long as it is a good personal tutor. They'll help you figure out what those mistakes are and what you are doing that is causing you to make those mistakes and help you to fix those things. So that might be useful. Okay. If you make 5 mistakes on the first quant section, can you still make a good score provided that the second section goes equally good or bad? It depends on how you're defining a good score. If you miss 5 questions on the first section, I'm not 100% sure on this, so don't quote me. But the way the algorithm works is based on how many questions you miss on the first section, you're going to get an easy, medium, or hard second section. If you're missing 5 questions on that first section, I do not believe you're going to get the hard second section. So that does limit how well your score is going to turn out. But if you really bring it on that second section, you can still raise your score significantly. You can also still lower your score significantly on that second section. So it just depends. So it depends on what you're shooting for. There are a lot of good articles out there about different people who have taken the test and taken it a bunch of different ways and what scores they've gotten based on how many points they missed and earned in each section. You can check those out. They're pretty cool. But yes, we want to try to succeed as well as we can on both sections, because you can still do a lot in that second section to either improve or lower your score. Okay, someone's asking, I have 4 days left and I'm hardly able to get a 145 in verbal. With 4 days left, probably not a ton's going to change on your score, realistically. What you can do is focus on strategy. We've talked a bit about this already. Make sure your anxiety is in check. But I would say be realistic. Your most recent test score is probably reflective of what you're going to see on test day. You probably won't be super far from it. Yes. So don't try to cram or learn anything new before your test day. It probably won't happen. I would say just prepare to probably take it again if that's not what you're aiming for. Okay, let's see. My verbal is pretty strong, and usually people say verbal is the difficult part. Should I be worried? I'm kind of anxious as I'm approaching my date. No, that makes sense. Anxiety is normal as you're approaching your test date. That's okay. If your verbal's strong, good for you. Awesome. That's good. That's fine. It just means that you're different than other test takers, and that's fine. Different people struggle with different things. If you are strong in verbal, awesome. Great. If you're particularly concerned about your quant, I would say make sure that you really focus on your strategies leading up to test day, making sure that everything you need to do is going to be it's going to click on test day, that it's fresh in your mind. But yeah, it's okay to be good at verbal. That's not bad. If you're really struggling with anxiety, though, I would what I would recommend is really write down all of your big strategies. That way it's all on one sheet of paper, and you know, if I know what's on this paper, I'm good. on test day, and you can feel confident in that, and then try to imagine various scenarios on test day and how to be successful in those scenarios, and you'll hopefully feel less anxious. And remember to breathe. If you're feeling like you're spinning out on test day, you're spiraling, just take a second, kind of maybe look away from your screen, do some deep breaths, try to recenter yourself, and go, okay, what's the best thing to do in this spot? Is it to move on from this problem, whatever, and then come back to it once you've taken a few breaths. It's never a bad thing to breathe on test day. All right. Any book or website to crack for reading comprehension and blanks? PrepScholar? PrepScholar GRE's program is really awesome for targeting your specific weaknesses, specifically specific content and strategy weaknesses. If you're looking for something that helps you to diagnose and gives you a specific study plan, as well as questions that aren't anywhere else, all new questions that are really accurately written. PrepScholar GRE would be a great program for you. It's all online. You can access it at any time, and it's customized, which is really great. With a book, you're not necessarily going to get exactly what you need. You're just going to get a lot of stuff, which may or may not be useful. So PrepScholar GRE is great if you're looking for something as general as the whole verbal section. If you're looking for specific tips and advice, that's free. Google around for it. The PrepScholar blog is really useful. We have some good stuff on this channel. It's still relatively new, so we don't have a ton of stuff yet, but we've got more stuff coming out. In terms of what else I would recommend, those would be the main things I would recommend. Make sure that whatever you're choosing, you're doing your research first. If you can, use a free trial, definitely do it. The PrepScholar GRE program comes with a 5-day risk-free trial. You get a full refund at the end of the 5 days if you don't like it. So it's a really great option if you just want to test it before you commit to it. So that would be what I would recommend. Okay, you're welcome to everyone. Is it good to solve more than 5,000 or more quantitative questions from several resources, or is it better to stick to one source? 5,000 questions is crazy. Probably don't do that, would be my main advice. Don't think about it as a number of questions. That's if you are focusing on the quantity of the questions you're solving, you're probably more worried about feeling like you're being productive than actually being productive. It's less about how many questions you do and more about whether you're learning from those questions. So I'd say do less questions, spend more time analyzing those questions and learning from those questions, and then choose which questions to do further based on your success on those questions. 5,000 is intense. Probably wouldn't do that. Is it better to stick to one source or do multiple sources? If it's a good source, stick to that source. If it's not a good source, maybe don't use that source, is my recommendation. I would say gold standard is ETS. Anything from the test makers is going to be good. PrepScholar is also a great resource. We put a lot into making sure that our questions are accurate. So if you're looking for things that are not the real deal but are still very accurate to the test, that's a good option. There are other good test prep companies out there with good questions. Just make sure you're doing your research first, that you try it out, that you compare it to real materials, that after you do some practice with them, you see if you're improving on real questions. So if you're not sure that your materials are good, try something else. Yeah, definitely do diversify, but try to hone in on what's good and what's not. How would I approach the vocab myself? Would I rewrite them on scratch paper or do a specific approach to make them stick? So what I would do is exactly what we've built into the vocab course, which is basically reviewing them using flashcards. So what we have is we have flashcards with the words where you can look at the word and then look at the definition. And then what I would do is I would go through those, and then I would use what's called like the waterfall method, which is basically I go through it, I look at the word, and if I can come up with the definition, I'm good, I know it. If I can't come up with the word, or if I can't come up with the definition once I read the word, then I don't know it, and I should put a star on that word. So what you can do in our course is you can put a star on that flashcard. And then I would go through, and then I would review just the starred ones, right? And if I am able to get it the next time, I take the star off. And then if I don't, the star stays on. And then I keep reviewing the ones I didn't know. Then I would maybe go back through and do them all again just to make sure they all stuck. And then what I would do is I would quiz myself. So the vocab course has built-in quizzes that uses those words in GRE style questions. Basically like a fill-in-the-blank style quiz where you get a sentence and you have to put in the word that fits in context of that sentence. So then once I feel confident, I would quiz myself to see, do I actually know this? And if I do, cool, I move on. If I don't, I go back to the flashcards and review some more. That would be how I would study vocab, exactly what we have in the course. So I did a lot of the design on that course myself, so it is what I would do. Yes, so that is what I would do. Flashcards are awesome. Make sure that you're using them effectively. If you're just flipping through about 1 million, not effective. If you are putting some out, if you know them, keeping the ones that you don't know, that's going to be useful. If you're using effective words, it's going to be useful. If you're quizzing yourself, it's going to be useful. If you're trying to put them in your own sentences, that's going to be useful. Yeah, so that is how I would study vocab. You can also check out our vocab video for more on this. I go much more into depth there. With PrepScholar, can I get a 325 plus score? Theoretically, yes. It depends on whether or not you complete the course, whether or not you put in good work, whether or not you're doing good study. So theoretically, yes. And then how will PrepScholar help me? So PrepScholar, basically, you sign up for your account. You take a diagnostic, and that diagnostic is going to determine what you're struggling with, where you're strong, where you're weak, what skills you need to work on, at what level you need to work on those skills. And then what PrepScholar is going to do is it's going to use your test date to devise a study plan for you for that week. Then you'll go through that study plan. It will consist of lessons and quizzes. How you then do on those lessons and quizzes will determine your study schedule for the next week. So if you pass everything, move on, level up, then you'll get an all-new set of lessons for the next week, prioritizing the skills that are the lowest level, the things that you most need to work on, the most important skills. If you do not succeed, then you will likely see that quiz again in one of the upcoming weeks. If you fail that quiz a bunch of times, they'll put a pause on it, so you don't focus on it anymore for a while, and then you can come back to it. So what PrepScholar does is it helps you make sure you're focusing on all the right stuff and then gives you good practice materials at the right skills and the right level for you. It also builds out a study schedule so you don't even have to think about it. Tells you when you should be taking practice tests, all that. It has really great, thorough lessons. For each problem, you're going to get a really thorough explanation of that problem, why the right answers are right, why the wrong answers are wrong, how you should have approached this question, how you might have gotten it wrong. So it helps in a lot of different ways. So it's pretty much a complete resource. The only thing it doesn't involve is direct human interaction. So if you're looking for a tutor, that is not something that's included with the PrepScholar GRE course. If you're interested in tutoring from PrepScholar GRE, feel free to shoot us an email, because that's not something we're currently offering too much of, but might be something we offer more of in the future. Awesome. So yeah, that's how PrepScholar GRE works. It's really awesome, really helpful. It provides the customization of working with a tutor at a much lower cost and at much higher convenience because you can do it anytime from the comfort of your own home as long as you have an internet connection. So it's a really cool program, and it's got a 5-day free trial, so you can give it a shot. All right. I find data analysis difficult in terms of correctly understanding the questions. It confuses me a lot what they're actually asking. Manhattan content is understandable for practice, but not ETS. help. Okay, if you're struggling with the ETS material, that probably means you're not very prepared for actual GRE material. So I'd probably say if the Manhattan material is not prepping you for actual ETS material, maybe don't work with the Manhattan material, because that's what you really want to prep for. Data analysis is interesting. We actually have a video about that coming out soon. Hopefully soon. We have it filmed. It's just not up on the channel yet. So when that comes out, I'd say watch that. In terms of my specific advice, spend time reading the question and look out for confusing language. They are trying to trick you. They are trying to get you to read the wrong thing. They're trying to get you to read the wrong part of the graph. They're trying to get you to find the wrong ratio, put the wrong denominator in, give a value instead of a percent. They are trying to trick you. So my big recommendation is slow down. Really be sure what they're asking. Only then should you try to solve. If you don't spend enough time trying to figure out what they're asking and jump right into the solving, you're not going to get it right. And if you can't figure out what they're asking in like 30 seconds, move on and try another question. Come back to it later. Would probably be my big advice. Okay. I have 25 days before taking my exam. I'm scared about sentence equivalence and text completion, how to crack a certain score. I've learned around 500 words so far. Still, I found new words coming in over and over. How to tackle this kind of situation. So the main thing I would say, well, first, watch our vocab video because we talk about this. You are never going to know every word on this test. Never. That's okay. I don't know every word on this test. It's just not going to happen. Don't try to make that happen because it's not an effective way to study. What is going to be effective is, at this point, don't focus on vocab. Move on. You spend enough time on vocab. What you want to focus on is focus on your strategy. Focus on finding your own words that go in the blank. Because what you'll find is that on most of those questions where you're confused, you don't have a good prediction for what words could go in that blank. So it's not a vocab issue. It's that you haven't correctly interpreted the sentence. So spend your time working on interpretation, come up with your own words, and then go to the answer choices. Eliminate ones that don't match your prediction, and then guess at the meaning of the other words. Use words that sound similar. Use whether or not you think the word is positive or negative. Try to use word roots, prefixes. Sometimes that will mislead you. Yes, that's true on this test. But it's better than studying 500 more words. That's going to be a huge waste of time. So predict is my biggest suggestion, and accept that there will be words you don't know. There will be, but you can get by. There might be a question or two you miss because of those words, but for the most part, you're going to be able to get through it and guess correctly. Awesome. I have 2 days. My verbal score is not improving. What do you suggest for me to do in 2 days? Your verbal score is probably not going to improve in 2 days. That's the main thing, is moderate your expectations. It's just probably not going to happen. What you can do, I mentioned this before, take a sheet of paper and write down all the big strategies you want to remember on test day so they're fresh. Try to make sure your anxiety is in a good place. Try to picture handling difficult scenarios. Make sure that you're managing your time successfully. That's something that you potentially can do in 2 days, but you're not going to learn anything else in 2 days. Yeah, I would say probably accept that you'll have to take the test again and that you'll need to give yourself more time to study. Yeah, I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but 2 days is not a lot of time to learn or really fully incorporate any new strategies. So work on solidifying what you've already done and do your best. Okay. I think that's it for questions. Perfect timing, because that's about it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you got your questions answered. If you have any further questions, feel free to throw them in the comments of this video. Once we post it, we're going to throw it up on the channel in a little bit, once it is fully uploaded. I don't really know the words here. But feel free to throw those into the comments. If you also have any questions about PrepScholar GRE, you can email us at GRE@PrepScholar.com. So GRE@PrepScholar.com with any questions you have. If you want to try out our online program, you absolutely can. We have that 5-day risk-free trial. We also talked a lot about our free vocab course. You can access that on our blog. It's one of the most recent posts. You can also search PrepScholar GRE vocab and it will come up right away. And if you want to see more videos from us, subscribe to our channel. We have new videos coming out all the time. So thanks again for showing up. Best of luck with your GRE studies, and hopefully we'll do this again soon. Bye.